it's a habit, it's tradition,
Yeah.
right? Now, before we jump and talk about ITC and, you were there from days 1 or -2, what can you tell me more about that picture behind you?
Yeah, so this picture behind me, I saw this. It's entitled, and I don't know if you can read the bottom.
I
Jackie
cannot.
Robinson. Yeah, it's called "Stealing Home," and it's
Mhm.
Jackie Robinson. And I love the picture. I love the hat. How the hat is like suspended in midair above him. But Jackie Robinson, for those who don't know, was the first black player in Major League Baseball. That happened late 40s. I want to say 1948 or so with the Brooklyn Dodgers, right? So he integrated baseball, and is really a personal hero of mine because frequently I am the only black person in a lot of the spaces I've been in my life. I haven't been, necessarily the first like Jackie Robinson has been, but frequently, I am the only. And so, I just draw personally a lot of inspiration because he went through a lot. He was people were not happy about his ascension to the major leagues, and it's a great movie about it. It's 42. Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther, starred as Jackie Robinson in that movie, and it's just a wonderful story, and it really showcases all the tribulations that he had to go through just to prove that not only did he belong, but he was also one of the premier players at that time. And the cream always rises to the top, right? And so, yeah, similar. I think in my story, folks have frequently second guessed, like, why is this guy here? Why is this guy here? Why is this guy here? And that's just kind of thing that you see as we continue to break barriers and change how things look in boardrooms, right? In classrooms, etc. So, yeah, I was fortunate to. I'm a graduate of Harvard University. You see a little Harvard, thing up there. Frequently people say like, "How did you get in?" Oh, you must have been, in the United States. You must have been, one of those affirmative action kids. No, I wasn't. I was just as good, just as bright, just as able, just as competent as everyone else. And once you give folks an opportunity, once you take down the barriers to entry, right? You really see all the magic and all the beauty that can happen. So that's a little bit about the story. But when I saw the picture, back to the
Mm-hmm.
picture, the hat
Yep.
is what the hat is
They
what
had
captured
what?
me. I was like, I was literally walking by, I was going to a restaurant in DC and I saw it and I said, I've got to have that. I was going out on a client lunch. I was like, hold on real quick right here. I'm going to run in that store and buy that picture. I've got to have it. And that was 25, 30 years ago, probably when I bought that.
So you are one of, the old, it's like the OGs of
Yeah.
InsureTech Connect,
Yeah.
and you are now leading InsureTech Connect. Now,
Yeah. It's fascinating.
you know, yeah, it's you know, before we jump to everything and talk about how was 2022 and your predictions for 2023, give a every year. Usually, I used to have Jay Weintraub coming and talking, and you're now sitting in his seat. Can you give a quick background of the story of InsureTech Connect and how it started back in 2016, or actually a little bit
Yeah.
earlier?
It was like late 2015 into early 2016. So Caribou, who was at Harvard with me, uh, Caribou went, Caribou went to Jay and said, "Hey, I'm a fintech investor, blah blah blah. There are these great shows in the fintech space, and venture capitalists are obviously very interested in deal flow and making as many connections as they possibly can, et cetera." And he said, "Here's an opportunity. I want to create a show in the insurtech space, but I know nothing about the events. I know nothing about events. And I understand, he had been introduced. I can't remember who introduced the two of them, but he had been introduced to Jay, and Jay was like, "Sounds great. I love that. This is the right time to launch it. I'm in." Um, and so I got a call from Jay, who I go back way back to like 1999 with Jay. Okay, and that's a whole nother long story. But long story short is I gave Jay his first job. Jay found me and sold me on hiring him. I was at the time the VP of media buying for advertising.com. Okay, advertising.com, it served ads, pop up. If you've ever seen a pop up ad, basically I'm to blame for the pop up ads, right? We were prolific banner ads, pop up ads, etc. Um, we competed with DoubleClick. DoubleClick was the big major one. DoubleClick got acquired by Google. We got acquired ultimately by AOL and became Yahoo's back end and Verizon, etc. Long story short, so um, Jay calls me up and says, "Hey, I'm going to launch this event in the InsureTech space." And I had known that Jay was in the event space because, he basically left online advertising to start an event called LeadsCon. And I'd been in touch with him for many years. Jay and I were golf buddies also. Jay and I used to play golf way back in the day. And he says, "I've been approached. We're going to start this event in the InsureTech space." I was like, "Oh, InsureTech. Okay." I was a fintech entrepreneur. I'd founded and was running with a few partners a fintech company that was doing digital payments to retailers, like brick and mortar retailers. And he said, "This guy named Caribou had this idea." And I was like, hold on. Caribou, like I know a guy named Caribou. I went to school with a guy named Caribou. He's 2 years ahead of me. Um, is it Caribou the VC Caribou? And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." So I was like, "Okay, I know Caribou. Brilliant guy." There's only one person in the world named Caribou, right? So Jay said, "We're going to start this InsureTech event. And I've got an ops person on the team already, but I need someone to help me commercialize it and build it." And I was like, "Yeah, it sounds very interesting." I had been running this fintech company for a dozen years, and I said, "Now's the time. Now's the time. Yeah, great time to transition from that company and do something different." Um, so I said, "Yeah, that sounds fantastic." I knew about the emergence of InsureTech from my experience with fintech. Knew obviously Jay, kind of knew Caribou. I knew of Caribou's reputation. So, yeah, I joined on, invested, a small amount in the venture, and really just launched it that first year in Vegas. We had 1,500 people come that first year. Sold a very small expo area, but it was such an important kind of event from the perspective of, our goal was to bring together the investors, right? The insurance incumbents, the insurers, the carriers, the reinsurers, and the innovators. And we had that three-legged stool kind of model to bring these three, groups together, as well as all the technology supporter, the tech vendors that support it, the professional services folks, what have you. But nothing was being done like that. So we really were the first mover, and it was just such an awesome show. People were talking about it, just there was so much buzz around the show, particularly after, like, "Hey, did you did you did you go? You didn't go? You got to go next year." So 2017 was really an epic show, and we just kept growing it, like growing it, 50%, 100% year over year over year, to this past year, 2022, we had 9,000 people at ITC 2022, and it's just, it's been remarkable to see this kind of growth in just such a short amount of time. But yeah, we started off literally, we didn't work out of a garage. We started off, working out of Panera. We would get together outside of Richmond. Caribou's in Richmond. I'm outside of DC. Jay would come down to DC, and then we drive down to Richmond and just, plot out what we were doing. And what was amazing now, I spent all my time on ITC, which is kind of strange for the events business because there are a lot of folks in our events company, Clarion, who work on many events. I work on one event all year, right? Even with Jay before, we had launched some other events, etc. But we did ITC that first year in less than 6 months, from soup to nuts, which was amazing. It scares me. It's just my ignorance about events. Had I known now what I knew then, had I known then rather what I know now, I should have said, "That's preposterous. There's no way we can pull this off in 6 months. But we did, and the rest is history.
Listen, from I was involved with ITC as an advisor, and I saw just glimpses of the things that need to be done. And I no idea what operations are actually doing. A little bit of what Tigh and the magic that they do in Vegas. So there was the shift to Clarion Events, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah. So
managing.
we sold the event, right? We sold the event a
Mm-hmm.
few years ago to Clarion Events, and people, for the most part, most people don't even know that, like, because we really just talk about the ITC brand, right? So with Clarion, we got, bigger infrastructure, right? As we continue to grow, that was really important to us because they have teams of people that only do the operations, that only do, the marketing, that only focus on, the content and those types of things. So we're able to build those economies of scale and leverage those economies of scale really based on having a company that, Clarion puts on, hundreds of events every year based in the UK, offices in Singapore, in the US, in the UK, in London, obviously. But we put on events worldwide through Clarion. It's just, there's just so much that we are able to leverage from vendor relationships, but just also just, just the intellectual property and just the knowledge that people have from building, from working on events, literally, throughout the year. It's amazing.
So what do you think? Should we should we jump to 2023 in your predictions and all the surprises then, or should we start with a summary of 2022 because it was the biggest year so far? There were like what 9,000 people who showed at ITC,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
new
9,000
events
people,
popped up.
400 exhibitors. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, 400 exhibitors. Wow.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like? Should we start with
Yeah.
summarizing
Well, yeah, we can start. Yeah.
2022?
Yeah. We can go through 2022 for sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
So how was the 2022 for you?
Yeah. So it was incredible. 2021, we had a very strong event considering, we're in the throes of the Delta variant back in
Mm-hmm.
2021. So 2022, what we learned in 2021 and was confirmed in 2022, Galad, was that there's nothing that replaces the face-to-face and in-person networking that happens at events. There's nothing like it. You know, we've learned a lot from technology in terms of like Zoom and podcasts and webinars and that kind of thing. There's a lot that we've been able to leverage, obviously, as humankind to make connections and to expedite things. But there's still no replacement for being face to face and elbow to elbow, breaking bread, slapping each other on the back, having a laugh, that was incredible. So we really were able to confirm that in 2022. But one of the things that we learned along the way, some of the things, obviously, the content is key to the event, right? Content is key. The connections are paramount to everything. That's what we do. We're very intentional. I give Caribou and Jay the credit in naming ITC InsureTech Connect because that is really, you know, the key to everything. But connections, content. Um, we've continued to build on our connections in the expo hall. The prime real estate, the center of the expo hall is our meeting zone, our one-to-one meeting zone. We did 10,000 meetings in 2022 in those one-to-one, through our app that were already scheduled in that meeting zone. 10,000 meetings in 3 days. God only knows how many hundreds of thousands of meetings just happened organically um, during that time also. So connections were huge. The content, we had heard from folks. We've done focus groups and surveys. We had wonderful content, but frankly, it was hard to figure out where to go when. And as you get groups of companies, particularly like insurers, will bring dozens of people to the event. We have thousands of insurers and reinsurers alone that come to ITC, about 30% of our audience. They're trying to figure out, like, hey, who goes to what on our team? They're trying to divide and conquer, right? And we have so much content. What we learned is we really have to have discrete tracks. And so that's something we did in 2022. Before, we kind of would just say on a stage, you could have cyber and then auto and then home or whatever, life and health. What we did in 2022 was we bucketed those into tracks. We had 7 distinct stages running as breakout tracks, plus an 8th stage each day running in the expo hall as a demo stage where we had some of the innovators and newsbreakers doing demos. So breaking out into content tracks was really key for us, and I think it helped people to digest the stage and content in a much better way. So that was a key happening. The expo hall itself was really epic. I mean, there was literally a buzz going throughout the expo hall the whole time. I know you helped to anchor the ITC Live desk and did interviews and that kind of thing. But we had stuff like the ITC Live desk. We had the demo stage, great coffee lounge, a beer garden, so many things. International area, the art wall, the puppy lounge. The
The
puppy lounge, I think,
puppies.
was the
It's the
star of the show.
puppies. Yeah.
The puppies. I mean, just seeing people getting joy. I have 2 dogs. Hopefully, they won't be barking during this podcast. But I have 2 dogs, and I miss my dogs. Like when I'm away, I call and FaceTime home. I'm like, let me see the dogs. That was something that just really was an emotive piece of the show that people loved. So yeah, and then just all the partners that come. All the folks that support us throughout the year. That just do their own thing. There's just so much to do at ITC, not just from our own content agenda and our own scheduled events, but because there are just so many folks that create a super rich atmosphere. There are things happening all throughout the event, particularly at night, that just make it a magical happening. And then we closed the show last year with our epic closing party. We had UB40 come out, and and that was really well attended. That was a lot of fun, and it just again it extends the connections. It allows people to just continue to talk and build relationships. Um, during the show in a casual kind of organic way instead of sitting down in a breakout session or sitting in a meeting. It's just another way to spend time together. And people really thirst for that. The pandemic really made that clear that people want to just get together face to face and spend quality time with each other. Not just, and it's not just, I think the thing that was most revealing to me, it's not just, you know, buyer seller kind of thing. But if you think about the pandemic, even on our own team, there are a lot of people on my team that I had not met in person until ITC, and I'm finding that is becoming more and more of a challenge, frankly, for folks as remote work has taken over, and we think about how people are working in completely different ways. You know, it's not just about meeting your clients, which is obviously key in any kind of B2B situation, but it's also meeting the people that you work with and spending time with them, your colleagues, your key partners. That's something that we really missed for a couple of years. So
Could you identify trends?
yeah, I mean, I think some of the trends, we try to reflect what we hear in the industry and bring that to bear in the event every year. So obviously, like ESG was a trend. So one of the things that we do is that kickoff day. We had 7,500 out of the 9,000 people came on that first day, the kickoff day, right? We had previously called it the pre-conference day, but there's so much to cover. We rebranded it as the kickoff day. We want everyone to know ITC is a 3-day event. Sabine Vanderlinden, the folks at Sonar, and a few other folks came together and did an ESG kickoff summit, which was really well attended. It was standing room only. Again, this year we did Broker Tech Connect with our broker partners, Broker Tech Ventures. We did Group Tech Connect with Fineos again this year. This is now the second year in a row we did that. And we also launched Capacity Connect with Doan Kaleli from Steer, who came up with that idea to bring together folks that have capacity and folks that are seeking capacity and really spend a deep dive in that arena. So those are some of the things that we produce. We normally did, like, previous year, 6 of those kickoff day summits. We did 16 of them this year. So some of those trends like ESG, commercialization of ESG was that summit. Finding capacity, embedded insurance continues obviously to be a big trend. So we saw a lot of folks from the embedded space. I mean, just yesterday I read about 3 embedded insurers, Oyster, Walnut, and Vertical Insure, all got seed funding. Each of them, 2 of them were $4 million. One of them was like $3.6 million. Embedded continues to be a big play. Cover Genius had the coffee bar, and just was also did a nice session. Cover out of Belgium was there too. A lot of leaders. So yeah, we see trends are not. I don't think we uncover per se the newest trends, but again, I think we do a very good job of producing, and putting the spotlight on the trends that people are saying. I want to hear more about this. I want to know more about this. We are not the news breakers, but we're the marketplace, so to speak, of bringing together those news breakers and those folks that people want to hear from. I think we do a really good job of that.
Well, you know my philosophy. I think that within the noise, and because there are so many people there, that's where you actually recognize the trend of what people care about and what they are listening. So, if there is content, how many attendees going to that specific track, or how many going to a specific session? If you have a booth, or in this case, there were 400
Right.
of them. So, which one is more visited, what are the different data points, what is more attraction, what is more attractive, and can we categorize and segment them? But that's me geeking out on data, and what the
Yeah.
crowd wants, and understanding the different trends that are derived from there. Because we can talk about 3D printing for so many years, but come on, it's AI now.
Right.
Just throwing buzzwords at you, which has nothing to do with anything.
Right.
So
Right. But yeah, but those trends, this embedded AI, cyber, again, it's very analogous to, where do you see the funding going? What kinds of organizations are getting parametric insurance also is becoming, more and more relevant. You know, Web 3.0 becoming more and more relevant. We did a couple sessions related to Web 3.0 and the metaverse and what have you. We'll see how the metaverse takes off. Obviously, you keep on reading. You're reading what I'm reading, and that we'll
yeah,
see.
I'm a
It might
little bit,
be one of
yeah.
those ideas that's ahead of its time, per se. But
Yeah, it's very hard for me. With Meta and all the things that they are trying to do, and it's a little bit contradicting to what we said earlier, which is like, yeah, everyone was cooped out, and now finally have an opportunity to meet face to face, and at the same time, you want to live in a virtual world during most of your time. It's like there is a certain conflict that maybe you need to educate kids into that earlier, which it's not really what I'm looking for. I think that people are people, and we should still interact in in this in this realm, and not just virtually. But that's me. There will be something there. Most definitely, there is a lot of money behind it that is trying to push it to virtual worlds, and insurance will need to be there as well, because there will
yeah,
be all kinds of challenges if it's your digital assets, to all kinds of liability issues, and etc. After ITC, I boarded the plane and find myself in dia, and now it's part of dia Munich, and that's
right,
part of
right.
the extended family now.
Yeah. So one of my goals has been, obviously I've been focused on ITC Vegas and the production of ITC Vegas, and that's my day-to-day job. But in the last few years, and again, Jay planted the seeds for this, but we've always said, ITC Vegas is the world's largest gathering of insurance innovation. But we were very keen on, let's bring ITC to, the 4 corners of the globe. So, finally in 2021, we got the ITC Asia show off the ground in
Yes.
Singapore, which was a great success, right? We've always admired what Roger and Reggy were doing at Dia.
Mm-hmm.
Um, their festival is phenomenal. The production is absolutely gorgeous. I mean,
Amazing.
they, they do an amazing job with just having just such a cool. It's the aesthetic is just so cool. So we've always had our eyes on that, and I played a key role in convincing again the folks at at our parent company. This is a business that we want to get closer to, and we want to get involved with them. So we did that transaction last summer and brought them into the fold. Um, so that's been great. It's been really interesting to kind of do that integration and what have you, because we want to keep what was really successful and what is really successful with Dia. The feel, it's a different feel. It's an amazing feel. We want to keep that feel and bring some of the components that we're doing in ITC to Dia also. So we'll see that in Barcelona
Yep.
next year. We'll see that in Barcelona. So and the last thing is that we're launching ITC LATAM in Miami. So that's going to be the first thing in 2023. We're bringing together the Latin American and Caribbean audience. Half of Latin American InsureTech is really out of Brazil, so we're bringing together Brazil and our old friend and partner CQCS
Gustavo. Yeah.
Gustavo's deeply involved with us, as well as the digital insurance LATAM folks, Ilario Triago, Ugs Bertin, Juan Mazzini from Celent. I'm missing, I'm sure, some Gabriela Rosier, even that everyone knows Gabi, and some of those key players, Leonardo Rodolfi and Hernan from 100% Seguro in Argentina. But everyone like Juan and I'm sorry, Leo and Hernan do a great show in Argentina. It's an Argentine show. I went to Gustavo's show a few weeks ago in Sao Paulo in
Mm-hmm.
Brazil. Great show. It's a Brazilian show. So our idea is let's bring all these great, regional kind of efforts together in ITC LATAM and focus on the Latin American audience. And also, for folks who are interested in learning more about the Latin American audience, it's a one-stop shop. Instead of having to go to
Yep.
Brazil and Colombia and Santiago,
Mm-hmm.
you can do it all, right there at one time. So we're really excited about ITC LATAM, which is going to be late April in Miami at the iconic Fontainebleau Hotel. People love Mandalay Bay in Vegas. If you like Mandalay Bay, wow, you're going to absolutely love the Fontainebleau in Miami. So yeah, we're going to be busy. It's going to be ITC LATAM in April. We're going to have ITC Asia at the end of May, and then ITC Europe in Barcelona at the end of June, and then ITC Vegas is going to be at the end of October. So we're bringing together the world, and Vegas is the flagship where kind of everyone from all around the world, comes to ITC Vegas. It's amazing. We have 60 countries represented. Gosh, thousands of people. It's about 15% of our audience is coming from all around the world. So outside of the U.S. So it's just amazing to see that. From starting at Panera, this discussion back in 2016, like, hey, how do we get more deal flow for Caribou, to what it's grown into? And it's been an amazing experience.
Now I'm just thinking about that I need to recheck my travel schedule for 2023 because it's going to be hectic.
Oh yeah.
Between just traveling all the things, and now we started spinning out delegations to Israel. So something that
Yeah, yeah, I
in
saw that.
partnership with
Kobe,
the
right?
Kobe, we call it the reverse Kobe, and
Yeah,
because Kobe
reverse
he
Kobe.
bring we love
He brings everyone, right? He brings everyone all over. He's
yeah,
amazing.
we love Kobe, and for years we've been trying to figure out how can we collaborate because he brings Israeli startups, right? The startup nation, the hungry, creative Israeli entrepreneurs. He bring them to the US. I met him a few times also in Europe, and then I'm an Israeli. I'm an Israeli American who lives.
Aishma.
מצוין, מה איתך? And 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 I had the opportunity to bring companies to visits in Israel, and we try to figure out, okay, great, how do we mesh, because there is also a bridge of culture and translating it. And now it's more about how can we bring, up to 20 people in a delegation to Israel to explore that and to do, the deep dive into the local ecosystem, right? So, and it's such a different operation. And of course, the unit economics and all the stuff, because between looking at ITC and other conferences that had the opportunity to participate and to, well, mainly ITC in terms of the operations, and looking at what do you do with thousands of attendees, hundreds of
Right.
sponsors, and then it's like, okay, how can we provide a white glove concierge experience for 10 to 20 people, no more than that,
Yeah.
because then
Yeah.
we're going to lose the focus on your specific needs. And it's interesting. Yeah, most
Yeah.
definitely.
No, I think it's a great. I saw that on I think LinkedIn. What a great partnership! And you see over my shoulder, I've got Startup Nation. That's Kobe had given me that book.
Oh yeah.
In my previous life as a fintech entrepreneur, my partners were Israelis also. So I'd read it. I'd read the book when it came out. Basically, my CEO was like, "Read this book. You'll get some more insight into just our mindset and our culture." And it's been a
Mhm.
dream of mine. I don't know if I could fit it into my schedule this year, but I absolutely would like to go and join that
So we are going
join that trip.
So we're going to so the dates this year. I think that we're going to organize three, maybe four. They're all attached to specific dates. So the first one is going
Oh,
to be in March, which is connected to InsureTech Insights, one of the only living competitors to InsureTech Connect. And so for the US companies that already go to InsureTech Insights, from there it's like, okay, the next day, 2 days later, after the weekend, you go to Israel and continue. The next event, it's at the end of InsurTech Israel's accelerator graduation, so that will
okay.
link to that date, so it makes sense. And then somewhere in fall, that I think it's going to be a month before ITC or something like that. I need to check with Kobe about
Okay.
exact those dates.
Okay.
So
We should
spread
link it on
around.
to ITC Europe in Barcelona. Late June. School's going to be out.
Yeah, we
Yeah, could
we can
we'll
see
see.
that.
We'll see.
We can talk about it. Well,
We'll see.
hey,
We'll see.
going to Barcelona, just I don't need the good reason to go to Barcelona.
We're really excited. So 2023 is going to be awesome, and yeah, like you were pointing out with the InsurTech Israel delegation, we have so many.
Hmm.
We had delegations from Africa, from Turkey, from Australia. Obviously from Asia. It's just so great.
The Australian pavilion.
With yeah, absolutely. And for Vegas, it's just to have all these. We really shine a spotlight on those innovators throughout the world in our innovation alley. We had 550-ish InsurTech startups at ITC Vegas, and we had over 100 in our innovation alley um, from literally all over the globe. It's tremendous. So we're going to double down. Like 2023 is going to be a lot more of what we saw in 2022. We're going to just and we have a lot of space. We have a lot of space at the Mandalay Bay. It's going to be a tremendous show in Vegas, and it's going to be a tremendous show at our other three locations worldwide. But yeah, there's so much to talk about
I
always
know.
in InsurTech. InsurTech it's always evolving. I think this year coming up, we're going to see a lot of
So,
consolidation. Now we're like 6, 7 years. That's kind of like the time horizon for a lot of investors. It's kind of like,
hmm
okay, we've given you this cash, we've given you the advice and the strategy and work with you. Now's kind of the time where it's like, it's the survival of the fittest. What's going to happen next? What's the exit? Um, I think you're going to start seeing a lot of exits, consolidation, some acquisitions, from both carriers and brokers. I saw just recently in the news that like Steuben Edge picked up Insurer Core, if I'm not mistaken. So you're going to see some of these startups that are kind of running out of runway really start, either getting acquired or
Mm-hmm.
potentially going out of business or going to a plan B and trying to reinvent themselves. We'll see what happens. But I think 2023, 2024 is going to be a really seminal moment for a lot of the smaller startups
So I think
that
that
are
you
just
already
new.
started. You basically started to answer the last question that I was about to ask you, because
Yeah.
we are already almost 40 minutes in, because it's always so fun to talk with you. Will 2023, 2024, maybe people talk about recession. Those are going to be maybe going to be hard years, and you already started to talk about the startups. How do you think it's going to impact the insurance companies, or does it really impact them?
Uh, Good question. It's really a good question. I don't really think
It's a
recession. I think recession, and we'll see how bad it gets. I don't. I personally don't think. I studied economics,
Mhm.
back in the day. I'm not an economist, but we see this. Like it's a normal kind of cyclical kind of thing, right? You have big surge, big growth, a little bit of recession, and it comes back, right? So I think it will slow down. I think some of the investment that you see from insurance companies and from their venture arms, perhaps a little bit. But what we're seeing already from 2022 is, I think the quote unquote, like, the dumb money that was flowing into InsureTech early on in 2016, 17, 18, like, if you had a good idea, you're getting funding. Yeah, that's over. But if you have a good idea, right? If you have a really good idea and you've proven out the unit economics and what have you, you're going to get a lot of funding, right? And we're seeing that happen. So I think, just like, labeling your company an insurtech, and I've got some AI, or some machine learning. Yeah, just because you say you're insurtech and throw out a couple buzzwords, you're not going to get funding. You have to have the true, um, you have to be able to deliver, really, ultimately, on, you know customers, and your loss ratio has to be in check. And that's kind of what we're seeing with some of the insurtechs that have gone public. Their loss ratios are out of whack, and it's really hard to justify as your enterprise value when you're writing big checks on claims all the time. We have to have, it's the fine tuning of
Mhm.
the data, right? All that data, and Juan Andrade spoke about this, at ITC. Like, it has to be forward looking. We have to bridge that gap, with using the data to truly reduce the claims, to truly reduce the loss ratios. And that's where I think, if you have a good idea, you'll still continue to see the investment in that regard. But it has to be proven already. It can't be just like, oh, I'm going to take a flyer on this. So I think that's where you'll see some of the companies, possibly not. I don't think it's going to be really scaling back the investment, but they're using a different investment thesis and practice now, instead of, like, because they just don't have the the runway to kind of just throw stuff against a wall and see what sticks anymore. You know, it's
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
the market is too mature on that end. Um, but I do still see, I again, back to the data, like, climate change obviously is real, right? Like, for folks that deny climate change, I think there's enough data
Come on,
points now to
move
say,
on. Yeah,
yeah, come
yeah.
on,
Move
like,
on.
that's
You
that's a
know.
political talking point. But like, so how do you use that data? How do you use all the various data points and all these? I think the carriers are kind of struggling with. I subscribe to X, Y, and Z, data provider. Let's say, like, geospatial data or what have you. How do I take all that information and truly integrate it into my core system, so I can then, on a customer service side, customer experience side, hey, I know, this kind of natural catastrophe or whatever is about to happen. This weather catastrophe, this climate change related thing is about to happen. How do I then mitigate the losses?
Mhm.
You know, and that's where I think there's still a lot of growth to be had, because
Yeah.
folks essentially have the data, but the data is still, essentially noise. It's so many data points trying to figure out how do I make sense of all this data, but most importantly, how do I use it to actually mitigate the loss? Because that's what insurance is all about, right? How do they mitigate the loss? How do they prepare the insured end user as best as possible to have a minimal loss experience, right?
So
Best for the end user, best for the insurance company.
yeah, the only thing that relate, I think that in terms of if you are discussing investments, from my conversation, many investors today sit on dry powder. They have the money to invest. They've been watching this for the past year. I myself haven't. I made introductions. I made, but my own money. The last investment that I did was a year ago. It was always almost. Sadly, it was almost this close this year, but there was something that didn't make sense in terms of valuation or mainly if it's a early stage, their distribution channel. That's the biggest key for me. The earlier you on later on, sure. Let's talk about the loss ratio and other things. But let's close it here because I think that Q3, Q4, 2023, we're going to cut. It's going to be, I don't know, catapulting out of it because there is so much opportunity. Many people are just waiting, and don't be pressured by your VCs. They need that IRR. They need to show value. They cannot sit, right? Their funds have a length, a timeline. So they also need to raise money for the next fund and to distribute and allocate funds from the existing funds. So finally, we reached the end of the episode, and I'm going to ask you the same question that I'm asking everyone. Can you give us a tip? It can be just something that we can adopt in our day-to-day life, or a book, or a show, or something that we should be aware of.
That's a good one. I always just, what comes to mind first is, there's only one right. Yeah, that's a motto of a good friend of mine. There's only one right. It's only one right thing to do. So when you think about it, I use that with my kids frequently. When you're trying to debate, life is a series of choices, right? Ultimately, there's only one right. Always remember that. Always remember, when in doubt, stay true to your values. But and that's a universal thing. It's one of those things like, there's only one set of facts. You can have your own opinion. I appreciate, hearing multiple opinions. There's only one set of facts. Similarly, there's only one right. So I leave you with that as we go into 2023. And thank you for the opportunity to sit with you here and to talk more in depth about ITC. It's been and you've been such a great partner to ITC. I appreciate everything that you've done for ITC over the years, and we look forward to having you again in 2023 to ask those hard questions at the ITC live desk. You're a great anchor. You're like the next Walter Cronkite.
Oh yeah, sure. Why not? Let me just mumble a few words that I cannot pronounce correctly, and that person knows what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for that, Bill. Thank you for joining me for this. What we said at the beginning, we'll just do 25, 30 minutes, which is now almost 50 minutes. But, that's what happens when you're having fun and you have so many things to talk about. Bill.
So much to talk about. So much to learn, man.
Oh, yes.
Happy New Year. And have a great Hanukkah, brother. To you and your family.